Our first workflow that I'm going to demonstrate in this course is what I call note-taking for networked thought, which is really the fundamental workflow of Rome research. It combines pages, blocks, linked references, the skill of indenting well, and I'm also going to show you how you can use the sidebar and focus on block within it. Those are probably not necessary, but they are certainly useful as you further develop those thoughts and those notes. You can kind of think of this as knowledge management or Zettelkasten light. It's not formally tracking things in the same way you might do that in the Zettelkasten workflow, which you'll encounter in a future module, which will show you a little bit more of that formality. But I mentioned here on the page a tweet from Connor White Sullivan, who is the founder of Rome, where he pointed out that many very capable people never feel the need to go beyond pages, references, and indenting, because you don't really have to if you're only trying to get your chaos in and look for insight. If you don't have to manage tasks or you don't need to be formal with any of that, that may be all you need to do in Rome research. And this workflow kind of shows how that functions. Rome's greatest superpower is taking that chaotic input and helping you make sense of it, helping you be clear, helping you gain insight. And this workflow is the fundamental aspect to that. Blocks, page references, indenting are the front end of this note-taking workflow. Linked and those unlinked references on pages allow you to examine connections over time and track ideas. And then the right sidebar and the focus on block provide you a useful flow for further developing and refining your notes. So let me show you how this works. I'm going to keep it simple. I'm not going to make this a 30-minute video or anything like that. But I'm going to actually jump over to a slightly simplified set of notes that I took on an article by Paul Graham called The Bus Ticket Theory of Genius. Now, when I take these notes, I actually do most of the page referencing and indenting on the fly, so that when I take them, I already have them sort of in that first form. For the sake of showing you how that works, I actually started by creating these notes just all on one level. They're all indented at the same level, so there's no indenting among the notes here. So there's no semantic connection between them, and I didn't put any brackets around anything. And I did this so that I can show you sort of step by step how I go about that without having to type everything from scratch. I didn't want you to see me reading the article itself, but I did want to be able to show you sort of how I go about deciding what needs to be bracketed, what needs to be indented, what doesn't, what are sibling blocks, what are parent and child blocks, that sort of thing. To start off with, I'm going to show you a little trick here that you might use to develop notes. I'm going to open, and this order that you do this kind of matters. I'm going to open notes in the sidebar, and I'm going to open network notes in the main view. Let me show you why the order matters. If I open network notes in the main view here by focusing on block first, I no longer have a way to open notes in the sidebar. It's gone. So I want to open the notes in the sidebar first. They're here now. They stay on the main page because I just opened them over here. That doesn't close them over here. And then I focus on block for the network notes here. So now I have my original unindented, just raw, took them on the fly kind of notes, which again, I rarely would do this because as you learn to think like Rome thinks, you're automatically page referencing and indenting as you go. But this still gives us a nice way of kind of seeing, even if you took notes like this, it would be very easy to go back and add those things that need to be added. I'm going to move this a little bit just to create a little bit more space there on the right. So let me start just sort of one at a time here. I'm just going to, I'm not going to do any, for those of you who know more about Rome and how it works, I'm not going to do any block referencing or anything like that here. I probably would if I were actually developing notes further. But I won't. I just copied and pasted that over. So this is just a regular thing here. As I look at this first note, genius is the result of obsession with a certain topic of interest. I'm struck by a couple of words in it. Genius is something that in my other reading I have explored somewhat. And so I'm actually going to throw a double bracket around that because I think that that's a page and a concept that needs to be interlinked with some other ideas that I have. And then I'm going to do the same with the word obsession. I'm not sure that that has as much connection with existing thoughts, but it seems like a territory that might be useful and interesting to explore. So my next note here, and if I actually just want to copy it over, I can, is it control drag? Is it shift drag? If I just drag it over, incidentally, it goes away over here. So you can move notes from one place to another. But you can also just copy and paste, which is what I'm doing right now. So I'll create my new block here by hitting enter. And I look at this next note. If it happens the topic matters, then that person will be considered a genius in the field. To me, that is related to the concept above it. So I'm actually going to indent underneath it. So now I'm saying genius is the result of obsession, and then I have this next thing that's indented underneath. If it happens the topic matters, that person will be considered a genius in the field. The next line here, genius is obsessive interest plus importance. Let me try something here real quick. I don't know which thing it is. That dragged it as a reference. Can I shift drag it or something like that? Nah, that just brings it out. Sorry, I'm double checking here. So I'm just going to copy and paste for the sake of this right here. The next line here, genius equals obsessive interest plus importance, is a combination of these two thoughts, that genius is obsession, and that if it matters, that's importance in this concept, the person will be considered a genius. So since it's related to both, I'm going to actually indent it all the way. And this is such an interesting little thing all by itself. It's something I might want to explore in its own note somewhere. I'm going to throw double brackets around the whole thing. If I were doing a full-fledged Jettelcast note here, I would probably actually tag it a couple different ways. I won't mess with that for now. But this is something that seems like it might be its own top-level thing at some point. So I'm going to leave that there. And apologies, my furnace just popped on here because it's a little chilly, so hopefully that isn't too noisy in the background of the audio here. I don't think it is. So the next thing here, it says paths to new ideas usually look unpromising. The idea behind this being that if they looked promising, other people would already have noticed them. This is pretty clearly in my mind. The second one is pretty clearly related to the first, so I'm going to bring that in. I'm not really sure why it's doing that, but we'll get those bulleted lists back here. I don't know if there's something, do it all at the top level here, and maybe that'll fix it. If they looked promising, other people would already have noticed it. So in other words, they're new ideas because nobody else has ventured down that path. It didn't seem like a very promising thing. So a lot of ideas, new ideas, look like they are unpromising new ideas. The next line here, it says heuristics to guess whether an obsession might matter are actually related to the next three here. So I'm saying that there are three ways that you can determine if an obsession might matter. And these are the three ways. Since they're all related to the top block at the same level, they're siblings. They're three different versions of an answer to the first block. I'm going to pop them in one level here. And so there they are now. So the word heuristics essentially means a quick and easy way of determining something. You can kind of, quickly understand something if you have a good heuristic for it. In the same vein of like a mental model. So if I'm going to double bracket that because that's something that I think plays into my thinking going on. Here's the word obsession again, and since we're on a sibling from the previous one, I'm going to go ahead and double bracket it here as well. What I mean by when we're on a sibling from the previous one, if we were to go into, you think back to the indenting lecture that I did, if I were to go to the obsession page, this one, I wouldn't be able to find this reference on the same level as this one without referencing it separately. So in other words, if I took out that word, now the only reference is here. I don't have any way of getting at that other reference from this one. But if I just Control Z there to undo. If I have it tagged separately, it's going to show up there. So since they're on the same level, it needs a separate tag. So if you are, ways to guess whether an obsession might be something that's important. If you're creating something and not just consuming, so if it's something that, you're generating material, that's a good sign. If it's difficult, that's a good sign, because that may be why others haven't tried it. And if the interested person is talented, that their interest is an endorsement in itself. So if they're a talented and intellectual is a bad word to use that, but if they're a person who has done good things in the past, if they're interested in something, the odds are pretty good it might be a useful obsession. I like this next couple here. I have the concept of stay irresponsible, which to me, that's something that's got to be a further developed thought down the road. So I'll highlight that and I'm indenting underneath that. If you only focus on responsible work, you close off the seemingly random side projects with the highest risk and reward potential. I think there's a balance. You do have to do some responsible work, but staying irresponsible keeps your thinking, that you're going to have the opportunity to be open to interesting new ideas to be obsessed over. And so last here are these 3 notes here that say encourage intellectual depth in kids. The schools will handle the shallow stuff and let kids find their interest and encourage them to dive in all the way. This, to me, these are all related. These 2 are related separately to the one above it, so I'm going to make them both child blocks under the main block here. So obviously, I don't need you to understand genius and obsession. I don't know that I do either, but I just use these notes as a way of demonstrating how this workflow works. So you can see how we used page references. As we go back and we review things over time, I can use these individual references. I can look at, say, I had another article that I read where I talked about obsession. That would show up on this page. I could see how these interrelate because they are interlinked, because I'm using that. So that's how the linked references come to bear on that. This is how the indenting and the blocks themselves come to bear on that. And this is one way to use the sidebar and focus on block together to develop thoughts further as you're working through your networked notes. So going into this first capstone assignment coming up next, I want you to think about each of the aspects of this: the features, the pages, the blocks, the linked references, the skill of indenting, sidebar, the right sidebar specifically, and focus on block. How could any of them make a difference, any or all of them make a difference in the work that you're doing now and in the work that you want to do in the future in Rome research? And then this concept here, and I kept it simple. There are obviously a lot of other things that you could do within this note-taking workflow, but the basics of this workflow, how does that change, or how does that reinforce some of the things that you've been doing and that you want to do within Rome research? So, don't skip the capstone portion. I implore you, don't skip that, because developing that, not only because that's a major component of the course to develop that, but because your thinking and the development of your thinking on these topics that's where the real meat of this is, and that's where you can really gain a lot of insight for yourself out of this. So do that capstone, share the insights and the things that are still confusing on the circle community, so we can kind of work those through and have a discussion. But I hope this network notes flow gives you some opportunity for insight as you work and develop toward that.